Hi, welcome to Where's Wilmington? I'm Lisa Capala. In today's program, we're going to be talking about why people do what they do. You know, you watch my program here on WCTV, and I'm always asking you to get involved. Now we want to take a little bit of a look at why people do what they do. So here I have with me today Congressman John Tierney. Thank you so much for being with us.
Lisa, thanks for having me on the show.
Now I know when you come and do these kinds of events, you get asked a lot of questions about what your policies are and where you stand on things. But I'd like to start a little bit way back from the beginning as to really why you became a congressman, why you got into politics. It's a tough job and it's a lot of work, and it's not for everybody. So tell our folks why.
Well, it's not for everybody, but I tell you, everybody hopes they get a job that they really love, and they feel invested and they feel rewarded for having it, as well as that they're accomplishing something, and politics is that for me. I think I first got an inclination I'd like to get into public service watching my uncle, who was a ward counselor in the city of Peabody. And, you know, it was probably one of the poorer wards in that area. But every day he did something. It was so gratifying to know that somebody got a break because he took the time and effort to help out, and he made a difference. And he made a difference not just in that ward, but for the whole city. And sometimes it set a good example for a larger area. And as I went through school and paid attention, whatever, I thought that someday I'd like to get involved in policy decisions on an international, national, and local scale if the opportunity ever came around. And it did, and I was fortunate, to get the job. And it is that way. I mean, you can really try to make sure that whatever people are concerned about when they sit down at the dinner table, whether it's education for their kids or health care, a job, and sustaining their job, now we talk a lot about energy policy, all of those things make a difference in people's lives, and I get the great opportunity to go down and try to make an impact on that.
Okay. How do you personally feel you're doing? Obviously, there's always more that can be done.
Look, I wouldn't continue to do it if I was frustrated and thought that I wasn't doing, what I wanted to do and what was good for people. People are entitled to their own opinions of that, and they have them every 2 years. But I feel, very happy with the first 10 years was in the minority down in Congress. Felt a lot of times like trying to make sure people didn't do things completely opposite of where we thought they ought to go and where I thought they should go, as well as trying to get good things done. This past 7 months in the majority has been a great opportunity to actually do a lot of things and moving in the right direction, I think, in setting policy on higher education, on elementary and secondary, on preschool education, Head Start program, health care, energy, international situations, and a lot of oversight that I think have been neglected for a long time. People have a right to know that their government is carrying out the laws the way they were intended and making sure that money is spent as wisely as possible. They have a right to have confidence in their government, not to get dispirited, as a lot of people I think are with government. And I think a lot of that has to do, for the last 10 years or so, there's been almost no oversight.
So you're talking about accountability, really.
Accountability,
being accountable
absolutely.
for the decisions you make based on what your constituents tell you.
Absolutely. And if we believe in government, and I believe in government, I think it has a role. I don't want it to run everything. I was in business for over 20 years, and I didn't want it to run my business. But I think it has a balancing effect, and it's supposed to stand up for people and make sure that they get their rights protected and that things happen in their favor. And I think government should do that, and accountability is a big piece of that. So we're very happy to be doing that.
How do you keep a balance between what you do as John Tierney, the person, and what you do as John Tierney, the congressman? We've just talked about 6 or 7 different little areas that are very broad that you're covering. And I think most people in today's world are trying very hard to balance what they do at home, school, and work. How do you really manage to make that?
I have an incredibly forgiving wife. Which
that helps. That helps.
Patrice has just been wonderful. She understands why I want to do what I do and how important it is to me, and I think she agrees with me that what we are doing is important.
You have to be invested in the same belief system, or that's not going to work.
Yeah, and she believes that it's important that we do what we're doing, and she also is great with people. So she actually spends a lot of time with me out and about at various things, and sometimes I think she's better with people than I am. So that part finds a balance. Sometimes it gets a little out of balance, and I have to be reminded that we have to go back and do that, and that works out. And the other part is I have incredibly good staff. I mean, one of the nice things about being in the job is we do have staff both locally here to deal with all of the people in the district and what their needs might be, everything from veterans benefits to Social Security, Medicare, housing, education, all those issues. They're very able staff that's very committed. Most of them have been with me almost for the full 11 years that we've been there. So they know a lot of people in the district now. People know enough to pick up the phone and get them if they can't get me right away, and then we work together on it, and that works out. And then down in Washington, I have a very able staff there to deal with the broader policy issues, and we always try to make sure they connect. When we're dealing with policy in Washington, it always has to relate back to the people in this district and what they're interested in, and vice versa. If something down here is up here in the district is happening, then we think, well, what should we do policy-wise if that's broader, would have applicability to more people?
Okay. Based on what you're hearing, you can only do what you hear.
Mm-hmm.
What are the issues that are really facing this area? The most important ones. I know there are many, but the ones that really stick in your craw, so to
You know, a
speak.
lot of them really haven't changed in the last 10 years. It's education. You know, it is one of the most motivating factors when I ran, and it continues to be that way. You know, you want to make sure that your kids have an opportunity to have at least the same quality of life you had, hopefully better.
Sure.
On that. So that means if not a full education all the way through college, at least an opportunity to have job training or some capacity to have a good job where they can support themselves and their family and contribute to their community. That's always important. Healthcare is huge now and becoming more so. When I was in business, it was getting more costly every quarter. Every time the bills would come out and we'd have to pay for our employees as well as ourselves, it was getting difficult, and it hasn't gotten much better. So that's an area where we really spend a lot of time and work on.
What are we going to do about these things? It's nice to sit here and
Well,
talk
education
about
we've done
them.
a tremendous amount on. You know, we just passed a bill on higher education. It was the first step in doing more, but we increased Pell Grants for students.
Excellent.
You remember back in 2000, the president said he was going to raise it from 4,000 to 5,100. Well, he only got as far as 4,050. We just raised it to 5,200. That makes those worth the same value they were when the law was first passed in the 1970s.
Right.
We reduced the interest rate on student loans from 6.8% to 3.4%.
That's excellent.
It's almost about $4,500 over the form of a loan, life of a loan for a student. That's very important on that. Bill that I had that I was really happy with was a loan forgiveness program for people to get into public service. So many families and students were saying, I can't get into public service, I got to pay off this huge debt. Well, we're going to forgive some of that cost of going to college if they get in and stay in. A year is $1,000, 2 years, $2,000, and all the way up to 5 years, $5,000. And we'd like to do more in the long run on that. We also forgive some loans from teachers that go into different areas to teach if they're highly qualified, than tougher areas to get in and teach. So that was a good piece of work, and there's more to be done there, but it was a good start. We're working now on keeping the college costs down and having schools do that. We just passed the S-CHIP, the Children's Health Care Plan. 5 million more kids are going to get health care as a result of that if we can get the president to sign it. With so many families, even families that make above the poverty line, you know, still don't make enough to pay the huge premiums that are there to cover their family. Well, the kids at least ought to be covered and get that started, and this bill would allow that to happen. Plus, we corrected some of the real problems that seniors were having with Medicare. One easy problem to describe was people that got into Medicare, when they finally figured out from all the choices which plan they wanted that had their drugs in the formulary. If the drug company changed in a month, seniors still couldn't change for a year. Well, we fixed that. You know, and we're going to lower some of the costs on that, so that's good. So, you know, you work at these things as hard as you can to make sure it makes a difference on early childhood education. We passed the Head Start Act, which our friends on the other side of the aisle hadn't been able to do for several years on that, but we took out the ideological aspects of it, you know, and we just put the bill straight out there. You know, a lot more kids are now going to be able to get early childhood education, and all the experts tell us you can close that achievement gap by 50% if you start them before kindergarten, start them early and move on. So we're having some great success. The last 7 months, I think, has been enormously successful in those issues that I'm talking about. The Green Jobs Bill that you and I spoke briefly about before we went on.
Yes, I was going to actually see if I could dovetail that. You're not just for education as far as we're talking about schools. You're about educating the public about how to make their life better through small business, large business, private, any way you can, really.
Exactly.
So let's talk
and
about
not just college, because we did a lot in the science, technology, engineering, and math teachers, and kids go through there and get their college degrees. But the other part of that is there are people who lost their manufacturing job because it was outsourced, because the technology came in. There are people coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq. There are urban city kids that can't get a job. There are all these situations where people may not want to go to college or probably can't afford it. They still need to get a good job, like our parents used to get a GE in Sylvania and other manufacturing jobs. The Green Jobs Act, which Hilda Solis from California and I put together with the help of a lot of people, is basically going to train people to do jobs in energy efficiency, conservation, alternatives, jobs that can't be shipped offshore. Jobs that stay here. Somebody has to install the solar panel and the wind farms, and has to do the geothermal materials and get buildings that are better and more efficient. All of those things that people will be trained to do. We passed that bill as part of the larger energy package in the House. 35,000 people a year. You're going to get a job. These are the things I think that matter, and that's why it's good. You know?
To the little guy and the big guy. And also, I would think, too, if you're building jobs in areas where we're going to need those resources, it's a win-win. I've got a job and I'm also helping the community, and in turn, hopefully that will help someone else to step up. We opened the program talking about doing the little extra things that you can to really make the community better. Would you share the story you told me about today that you spoke with
Absolutely. Well, the whole
someone
idea
about
of this green jobs thing was we have this whole, finally the tipping point where people are starting to be conscious about energy and global warming. But nobody was thinking about where are you going to get people to do these jobs. So that was the idea of doing that. This morning we were up at EBSCO Publishing in Ipswich, and Tim Collins, who's the CEO up there, has a growing company, about 650 employees, 3 large buildings. They put solar panels on the entire roof. Now, he did this without any government incentives. He did it because it was the right thing to do. It'll take him maybe 15 years to recover his investment. But the impressive part was, one of the things he said is, I'd like other people to see that you can do it.
Right.
I'd like other people to know that it makes a difference. Right. So we did a little event up there, and we invited a lot of people, and we talked to other businesses about what they could do. And we've been going around the district, just got 125 businesses together down in Sylvania, and brought in the Department of Energy, the Environmental Protection Agency, the State Department of Environmental Protection, different not-for-profits, people to talk about what a business can do. And then we did another one about schools and public buildings to save money, to save energy, and how both of those things go together and help them keep their employees paid and hired.
Right, because sometimes you'd like to get involved.
You have to know.
But it just seems like a nice idea. You hear it on the news, you think, oh, I should do something. But you don't really know what you can do.
But it also seems very small. If somebody says, we change light bulbs, it makes a difference. Yeah. But then when somebody says, well, if you change light bulbs, this is how much energy you're actually going to save in your store or your business. This is how much money you're going to save. And people say, like, wow, I didn't realize I could do that. As I was telling you, some schools were saving $20,000 a school. That's at least a half of a custodian's pay when they're being laid off, and then the school starts to fall into disrepair. It makes a difference. And so if people get that and they see, like, gee, that is a real number, and it can be done, and we're saving this energy, and if we did it through the whole city or town, and then if we did it through the whole state, it moves off. We even did it with students and light bulbs. We went out to the schools and we showed students if they changed 3 light bulbs in their house, it made a difference. And then what if the whole town did it? And then if the whole state did it, what the whole country did it? A lot of those kids went home and got their parents to change it.
And that's usually where it starts. I know as a kid, if I learned something in school, I would bring it home, and Mom and Dad, we have to shut off the lights more. We have to come up with a safety plan. Sometimes the kids will really get the parents
motivated. Look what they
motivated.
did for smoking.
Sure.
When the kids got onto the idea of smoking was bad and started giving their parents a hard time about it, the culture changed.
Right.
And if kids are getting really interested in energy, and they are, then the culture is going to change, and people are going to use different light bulbs. They'll drive different cars. They'll build their buildings, their houses, and their businesses differently. Things that'll make a difference, and I think that we're going to see a lot of that. And so hopefully that's what part of today was, going out and giving people an idea.
So you're trying to get the ball rolling.
Well, we've been doing this for 10 years.
Yes,
we had hearings in Peabody 8 to 10 years ago, trying to show people there were jobs here, as well as energy efficiencies and money savings. And as I say, I think we're at this tipping point now, and we're able to put into legislation some of the ideas that are going to make a difference. Our legislation, for instance, on making sure that our generating facilities use 15 to 20% of alternative sources.
Right.
If we get that nationwide, as our bill would call for, we need higher standards on gasoline mileage. As long as you said, the sizzle is in the alternatives, the solar and the wind and all that. The stake right now is efficiencies and conservation. We can save enormous amounts of energy and money consequently as well if we are careful what we do, buy the right appliances, build buildings with the right materials, drive the right car that gets better mileage. All of those things make an incredible difference.
So you are here today. You have my lovely viewership watching. Before we go today, tell us what you really want us to know about you. I'm sure an election is coming up.
Well, the election, thankfully, will be next year, not this year. But I think people...
what do you really want people to know about John Tierney?
Well, that hopefully they expect service out of their member of Congress, and we have a tremendous number of people that contact us, and we have a good dialogue going in the district, but they should never be afraid to pick up the phone for any local issue or personal issue that they have, but also to talk about policy. Make sure I know how they're feeling and what they think of different bills that are going in there. And I hope it's a two-way street. I'd like them to know what we're doing, because government can be an effective force for good. We have to do away with the cynicism that's out there so that we'll make it be a good force. So we'll spend the time to make sure it is. I want to have that dialogue with our constituents because, again, I believe in the service. It's, really what makes the job rewarding, and also what gives me the ability to go down there and fight hard for the things that matter in our district if they know, that I'm doing that, and if they're paying attention, if they're writing into the newspapers saying, this is what we want done, and then he either did or didn't do it. and it moves forward from that way.
So it's just like we talked about in the beginning, your uncle, you watched him growing up.
Right.
Now hopefully you'll be able to pass the torch along to someone else.
Not too
And
soon, but we'd like to
hopefully,
do that for sure. No, we
what
do
I
want to
mean
get
in
other
a way
people
is that
involved.
you want to get people involved, and you want somebody to come up through the ranks and see how it works and learn, just like you did.
Part of that was the service pays bill that we just filed. We want young people to get up and say, government has a role to play. I want to be involved in that. Not, it's for somebody else because, I can't even make a living doing it, and that's part of the problem with these kids, or, gee, nobody respects it, so I don't want to go in there. We have to get back the respect of it, get good people in there to do the right things.
Excellent.
And hopefully that's what we're
Thank
doing.
you so much for coming,
Thanks very much.
Congressman.
I appreciate
Great to meet
it.
you, and I don't want you to leave anytime soon. You just
Thank
keep
you very
doing what
much.
you're doing. We'll be back with more of Where's Wilmington right after this.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. It takes a man to be a dad.
I'm Chris Barbolito from Pack 361, and you're watching WCTV Wilmington Community Television.
Hi, welcome back to Where's Wilmington. You are with us for the second half of our program, and today we're talking about why people do the things they do. John Tierney talked to us about why he was a congressman. These gentlemen are going to talk to us about why they do something called the Pan Mass Challenge. It's a bike race. Why do you guys do that? First, let's say who you are. You're Mickey Rooney, not the Mickey Rooney, the other Mickey Rooney, the better
Almost
looking,
as old.
taller Mickey Rooney, and Frank Hobner.
Right.
You folks are friends, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Who do this challenge together. Can one of you tell us a little bit about what the challenge is?
The challenge is, there's two. The first challenge is raising enough money to be eligible to ride in the bike ride. And they really discovered using the word race. They don't want that.
Okay.
The young guys and girls up front, they kind of have a race. The first one's going to be in for the day, whatever. But they really discovered that because of the safety factors and so forth. But and then the main purpose of the bike ride is that we raise that money, and all that money goes to the Dana-Farber Jimmy Fund, which right now is probably 99 cents on every dollar that's donated goes directly to the Dana-Farber Jimmy Fund.
And you can get that information in this lovely pamphlet that you can get from the organization is pmc.org. We'll put that up on the screen for you. They were saying that last year the Pan Mass Challenge raised $21 million. Somewhere thereabouts. That's a lot of cabbage for a really great organization.
And I think this year's goal, the person who started this ride in 1980, Billy Starr, he started the first year he did it. I think there were 13 riders, and they raised something like $13,000, and they got lost and didn't have anything to eat and didn't have any place to stay, and it was really kind of a horror show from what I understand. So since that time, at $12,000 or $13,000 that he had raised that year, this year his goal is about 27, maybe 28 million, which would add up over the 27 years. I think it's going to be like 180 million.
Yeah, 180,
183, somewhere around there.
And that goes directly to Dana-Farber.
That goes directly to Dana-Farber. Every year they have a get together with all the riders who want to go, and they'll have a check presentation, and they'll have speakers there from Dana-Farber, and not just riders go. They have sponsors go, our sponsors, and they have naturally the riders and a lot of volunteers.
Okay.
So the volunteers and the riders and the sponsors, without one of the other, the whole thing would just collapse. It just wouldn't be. And each group is as important as the other.
Right. You can't do a race without all that
can't.
support, obviously.
Can't.
Tell me, Frank, a little bit about the actual course structure itself. How many miles is the race? How many days does it run? And I understand there are different races
Right, they're
held
different
in
routes. They're
communities.
different routes. You can do a one-day route. You can do a two-day route. They have a new loop now that you can do. I think it's Wellesley to Wellesley. It's like 40 miles. I know Mickey's been doing it for 100 years anyways. I've been doing it for about 5. But we start in Sturbridge. at 6 o'clock on Saturday morning.
And this is going to be in September or sometime?
No, we just did it.
Oh, you just
we
did
just
it?
did it.
Oh, okay.
We just did it a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
So we start off in Sturbridge, and we go, I think it's 110 miles the first day.
Wow.
Right. And we end up down in Bourne, and the whole hub meets down in Bourne the first day. No matter what route you do, pretty much you end up at Bourne.
Okay.
And everybody stays over there. Some people in one-day rides go home. We stay down, get up the next morning, get out the bikes at 5 again, and then we get down to P-Town. We do another 84 miles, and we get down to P-Town around 12 or 1 o'clock.
Wow.
So it's about 194 altogether.
So the obvious question is, why would you physically put yourself to this kind of test? What's the motivation to do it?
Well, I know when I started, my mother, well, this wasn't my mother, my mother-in-law had passed away of cancer. And I happened to see Billy Starr's picture in the paper down in September talking about this big ride. So I told my wife, I said, you know, maybe I could do something like that. I might enjoy that. And she says to me, well, she says, you have good intentions, but you never follow through. So I said, oh, okay. So I put the paper away, and the next year is when I got involved. I started riding. I had to do the Wellesley to Wellesley. Right. Wellesley to Bourne to Wellesley because it was all full. That was about 160 miles. And then since then, I've been doing with Mickey every year since.
Okay. And Mickey, why is this such an important cause to you?
Well, now, when I first started, it was really kind of there were 4 or 5 guys together at I think it was actually at a Patriots game, and we heard about this bike ride, and at that time there was probably only 200 or 300 riders, and we read it in the Globe, and we kind of just did it to just do it. We really didn't,
if you could do it.
To see if we could do it or whatever, and so we all got together and we started riding at that time. And then we realized what a real challenge it was because none of us had prepared to ride that distance or whatever. Yeah. But we did make it, but it was a lot longer making it then than it is now. Right. So then I didn't go back for 2 or 3 years. I said, gee, no, we're going to have to think about this for a while. And then a friend of ours passed away with cancer, and then we just started just from that time on. So.
Do you find, either of you can answer this, riding in the race helps you in some way to feel like you're really doing something to beat cancer? Is there a sense in your mind when you're riding that that's really what you're doing?
I think so.
Yeah.
Really? I think, yeah, exactly. I mean, if they can raise this kind of money, you know, every year, it's got to get to a point where, you know, it's hopefully, you know, before our kids come along, you know, their kids, I mean, maybe it'll be cured by then.
Which would be great.
That would be awesome.
Now, how many miles do you both actually ride? You said first you started out with the Wellesley to Wellesley. How many did you do in the ride that you just did?
That was 194.
194 miles.
What's that 192 or 103 mile like? What's that feel like?
Oh boy, well the first from Sturbridge to Bourne is probably the toughest part.
Because it's
very hilly.
Yeah.
The first 40 or 50 miles are very challenging. And then it kind of eases up a little bit. And then, you know, once you get down to about 20 miles left, you don't even think about it.
You're just going.
You're just going on adrenaline. That's all it is. You just keep going.
Do you find a sense that your mind clears over time as you're riding? Do you get a sense of like you're kind of one with the road and just doing your thing? What do you think, Mickey?
Yeah,
is that too zen for you?
You do, and then there's a lot of other riders always with you, no matter. Sometimes Frank and I would ride together for maybe 1 or 2 water stops. There's water stops every 20 miles. And then so you have discussion there, and there's talk, and then there's other people coming along. Right. There's always, and then every 20 miles there's a water stop, and it's amazing when you go to the water stop. It's just full of excitement and enthusiasm. Sometimes they have a band, and everybody's dancing and singing, and they have food, and they have plenty of water, and so that kind of lifts your spirits up a little bit too to go the next 20, and it works out pretty well that way.
Okay. What's your goal for next year? You've already done 194 miles. What could be the next year's goal for you guys? Try to raise a little extra money?
Just to be able to do it again.
To do it again, yeah.
No, I think Billy has a tendency to raise it up every year, depending on what ride you do.
Talking about Billy Starr?
Billy Starr, right. I think this year, for our ride, it's $3,600 we have to raise per rider.
So you have to have that just to even get into the program?
No, we can get into the program, but when you first sign up, you give them your credit card. and you're liable for that $3,600.
So that behooves you to
Right.
kind of get out
I think
there
at the
and
beginning,
get the
what
money.
happened was when Billy first started it, people would sign up and they wouldn't come because there was only a few $100s. So we had all these people, volunteers, and they were, there was nobody around to do, no riders to do anything. So then I think he got a little upset about that, and he said, okay, we're going to start, I don't know what he started off 15 years ago. We're going to start charging people to make this ride.
So that makes sense. That way, if you're really committed to it, the $3,600 would be a no-brainer. But
Right.
if you're not, then obviously you don't belong there
right.
anyway. So it doesn't
Exactly.
waste anybody's time, which
Right.
is really good.
No.
And I understand that kids and even people with disabilities can get involved too.
Yeah.
Can
Well, Frank
either of you speak
Frank
to
is an
that?
amputee from Vietnam, and there's another guy that rides with us from Burlington, Mike Welch. He's also an amputee from the knee down. And actually, during the course of the ride, you do see other people with disabilities.
Yeah, there's about probably 4 or 5. You see
Yeah.
4 or 5 amputees that will ride.
Yeah,
One guy actually just rides with one leg, period.
yeah.
No other leg on one side.
So that's got to be inspiring.
Oh.
Yeah,
You got to
it
think,
is.
why are
You
we...
say to
Right,
yourself,
exactly.
what am I complaining about,
Right.
right?
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And how about what the course is like? Some of it is hilly, is some of it, is it very nice scenery-wise? You go through some nice communities. Give us a feel for what that's like.
I think, well, I would say the first 50, 60 miles, like Frank said, was probably the most difficult.
50 or 60 miles.
But-
The first 2 miles would be enough for me,
Yeah.
okay?
It's beautiful country down through the Blackstone Valley.
Right.
And beautiful farmland, and it's just the atmosphere that really makes you feel good. You don't deal with traffic. They have police officers at every intersection. If you wanted to and were capable, you could get on your bike in Sturbridge and not stop for anything until
Right.
you got to Mass Maritime, 114 miles, whatever, without even stopping. So
Right.
it's just so well coordinated now, and they have like 2,600 volunteers who work that weekend.
So it kind of sounds like the Boston Marathon for charity with
Right.
cyclists.
So-
Yeah,
really.
exactly.
How do you train for something like this? Do you guys actually get off your bikes that day and put the bikes away for a couple of weeks? Or do you kind of keep going so you'll stay in shape?
I sold mine. No,
Did you,
No.
for the money to get
To
in?
get into this,
Yeah,
yeah.
that
No.
would be a good story, like the gift of the Magi. He sold his bike to
Yeah.
get into the Pan-Mass Challenge.
I think the hardest thing is in the spring, when you can finally get outside and start riding. It's hard you get motivated to get on the bike.
Right.
But once you get on the bike and you do, you start off with, say, 10 or 15 or 20-mile ride, and then you kind of get into it, and there's a bunch of us that will ride. We'll ride on Saturdays, might do 40, 50 miles on a Saturday. This year we went out to, one of our friends took us out to the Quabbin Reservoir and trained out there. That was horrible.
And I imagine you do this event, rain or shine, hot or cold.
Yeah.
Hot or cold,
So you
yeah.
have to kind of train in every condition to be
Right,
prepared.
exactly.
Wow, you guys are really fanatics.
He
Yeah,
is.
this is some serious stuff you're
We're
doing
missing a
here.
few brain cells.
That's all right. Well, as long as it's for a good cause.
Yeah, it is.
What would you like the viewers today to know? What do you want them to do? What do you need from them? Our viewers are pretty good about doing what we ask, so this is your chance to tell them
Well,
what you
one
want
of the
them to
things
know.
I would like to get across, and I was talking to you earlier about it, was she's a school teacher or whatever, and she runs, now they've started also PMC bike rides for little ones. And I think it
Right.
starts like maybe the 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, and they do it over at the middle school area. And this girl started 2 years ago, and they raised $15,000 for the Dana-Farber
That's
Jimmy
really
Fund.
good.
And this past year, they did it at a different time of the year. She also raised, I think, in excess of that. So I would just like to kind of give that a plug, so when that comes out again, for the parents to bring their children there. And now we have a nice new young group that are working their way up
Right.
into...
So when you become a volunteer instead of a rider, you can help them.
That's right, very
Right.
good.
And what about you, Frank? What do you want our viewership to know? What would you like from the community at large?
Well, first of all, I think we have to take our hats off to all the people that volunteer. There's a ton of people. You couldn't do it without the volunteers.
Right, right.
And as far as the fundraising, all the people that contribute to me, and I know Mickey, you hit the same people every year, and
Right.
it's not it's not easy, but I think everybody's affected by cancer. The first year I did mine, very first year, when I got home. That Monday I got home, my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer that Thursday.
Wow.
And so she died 6 months later after my first ride. So that was hard, you know what I mean? So I just want people to, to get out there, and if you're able to do it, just go ahead and do it. I mean,
And
you
it
can
sounds like it
volunteer.
can be very healing for you if you're stuck where you just feel like, how can you get past the grief or the emotion that you have?
Right.
Maybe this is a way to really feel like you actually can do something. Maybe you're not a doctor or a surgeon, but one little guy can make a big difference.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
But I think too, a lot of people, not a lot of people, but a few people have mentioned to me, when are they going to have a cure for this? When if they're saying all this money's going into it, where's all this money going? The doctor's making millions, and that's really not the case. And that there has been so many improvements in different types of cancer, and especially children's cancer is really, if that's discovered early enough,
Right.
it's like up to a 92, 94%
Cure rate.
cure rate.
Yeah.
And then a lot of adult cancers that are being not cured, but there are other methods to keep people going,
Right,
and
right.
hopefully that comes
Right,
out.
because it's not just the cure, it's actually, going to centers where now they have valet parking that's free. I mean, for patients, that's incredible, and it should be that way,
Yeah.
but we can't do those things, those little, we like to call them extras, that really aren't extras
Yeah, right.
for people that we couldn't do without
No,
you
you
folks
couldn't.
out
No,
there
no way.
doing what you
No.
do. So next year, will you come back before the race so we can get you some more sponsors and tell us what
Oh,
you're
we'd
gonna
love
do?
to.
Sure.
Yeah, we'd
Excellent.
love
That'd
to.
be excellent,
Yeah.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for what you're doing and for coming with us.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right.
It's been great.
And just reminding you, well, see, you survived. More than 13 minutes. Just reminding you that you are watching Where's Wilmington. I'm Lisa Capalla, and the next time somebody asks you, where's Wilmington, you tell them right here, and right here on WCTV.